I think that people who don't utilize services within the community then also do not bear the cost of big improvements also. So if we can say, have more separation just in terms of, even if it's for accounting purposes only, so that we have an internal record, and the work's pretty much been done. As Bob said, we know not exactly, but roughly how much it costs for the year already. So we have a good idea, at least with the enterprise fund.
If you wanted to.
Oh, right. I mean, which is
keep track of it over the year.
Yeah.
Different things we've done outside of our department for other departments in the town.
Right, which not as a punitive thing, but then it's good to know. So then when it comes time to approve the budget, if you are asking for an increase on town floor, you can say, oh, by the way, we also did this, this, and this for the town, outside of what we necessarily had to do or whatnot.
Okay, this is discussion.
Right, exactly.
We all know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Another item came up as a result of all this, and that is, do we need to re-engineer business processes? Or, is the cost per check something we could reduce?
Which would be great if
we had one meeting today about reducing paperwork between the fire department and the financial management departments, which I think will reduce redundant paperwork significantly. So one of the side effects of this exercise is that we see how much it actually does cost to issue a check, and what steps can we take to bring those costs down?
not just for you, but for obviously the whole town.
For everybody.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Historically, the sewer department wasn't even paying their major benefits like medical, dental, health, retirement. And Lou and I sat down with the town powers and said, this isn't right with the enterprise system. It's not working right. So we figured out what our costs were. We started paying those. And then someone said, well, gee, you should be paying for the treasurer's time and the accountant's time. And we sat down with the treasurer and accountant, and I believe it was Tammy Collar, previous treasurer, who said, I figured out it was $2.28 a month or something. It's not really worth doing the paperwork. So it was very businesslike, and that's the way I think this process should go. Someone came with, all of a sudden now maybe things changed, maybe they didn't, but somebody recognized that, geez, we paid quite a bit, to generate these checks. Let's just make it fair and businesslike. So we approach it from that perspective, and then we can just like we reached a consensus with the contract for Pleasant Street, where we're going to go with that. We reach a consensus of, well, we're not going to nickel and dime, but at the end of the year, we'd like a little more accountability, financially speaking, than we had in the past. I think when I talked to Bob last, I kind of mentioned that. That's the way I would like to see it go. It worked well before.
You're right, Don.
As part of the conversation, the town should also realize that 75% of the long-term debt, the surge, is on the taxpayers and not necessarily coming from the users. So the town is footing 75% of their long-term debt. So I think that's part of the equation that you have to look at.
Yes.
And that was voted on town floor.
Oh, right. Okay, is there anything else? Okay, if not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. The next item we have is to discuss the White Circle roadway acceptance. I don't know, Holly, if you wanted to, or if you wanted me to. Okay, sure. So we received an email message from Andy DeVoe, the Creative Designs and Additions, that says, Dear Ms. Young, please see the attached letter regarding a subdivision of land and its roadway located off South Road. The roadway has been completed and has weathered a complete season duration greater than 1 year. We ask to have a warrant article placed for the acceptance of the roadway. If you should require any further information, please contact me at this email address or at my cell phone. Thank you in advance. And then the letter that we received, Yoakum Building and Development, Inc. Please accept this letter as a formal request from Yoakum Building and Development, Inc. to present the following article at the next annual town meeting or special town meeting, whichever shall first occur, to see if the town will vote to accept the private roadway known as White Circle, a dead-end cul-de-sac roadway newly constructed and extending from intersection with South Road, owned by Yoakum Building and Development Corporation, and is shown on a definitive subdivision plan approved by the Planning Board on September 13, 2005 as a public way, or take any other action relative thereto. Thank you for your kind consideration. Signed, Andy DeVoe.
Mr. DeVoe is here.
Oh. Would you like to say anything about the request? Sure.
Mr. Chairman and board members, thank you for the opportunity.
Sure.
I am Andy DeVoe. I am the current owner of White Circle. It's a small 7-lot subdivision located just off South Road. We bought the project from a Mr. Minchenberg back in 2006 with the intent to build 7 houses on the property. And then I think we all know what happened to the market conditions and the economic downturn. We're faced with a recession that is probably greater than any recession we've seen before at this point. The market fell apart for us, and we ended up constructing 3 of the 7 homes. And at this point, we are not in position to continue building the homes. We have 2 opportunities now to either sell the property or sit on the land for another 4 or 5 years and wait for market conditions to improve before we finalize the construction on the other properties. So at this point, we have completed the roadway. It has weathered a time period greater than 1 year. We have currently taken no monies from the tri-party agreement for any of the construction. But at this point, having had the road completed, I met with Powell with the planning board, submitted plans to him, and he assured me that he would be sending his recommendations for you as well.
Okay.
So I respectfully ask that a warrant article be included in the next town meeting for acceptance of the roadway as you see.
And what condition precedents must be met? Is there any planning board? Yes. Okay.
What he said is right. I mean, it's not the council secretary, it's not the.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean that.
No, that's okay. The protocol is that, as you know, planning board takes every subdivision from start to finish, but in our bylaws, it says that the board of selectmen are charged with the acceptance of the road, so this is protocol he needs to follow. So your protocol is just to send it back to us, and we'll give you the report. We've already solicited the Whitman and Bingham Associates out of Leominster to do our peer review, and they're gonna do a last inspection on to give it their blessings. And so this will be definitely ready for our next town meeting, whether it be fall, spring, whatever. In his case, mostly in the fall, so he doesn't snowplow it. But it is, just like you said, it's done.
So the next step then would be for us to vote, and then you would give us your recommendation prior to.
The actual next step for you, Mr. Chairman, is to just notify all the departments in
Okay.
town.
Gotcha.
Just a letter, just saying if you have any comments, send them to you or CC Planning, so we can make sure everybody else is happy. But I mean, it's well and septic's up there, so it's not really, with the exception of town light and, highway department, whatever, but highway, I'm assuming you definitely take that here with your report over, them doing their own inspections. So.
Do I have a motion to move forward from the board with sending out the notifications to department heads to request feedback and including from the planning board to look at possibly adding this to our next either special or annual town meeting, which obviously will vote the warrant as part of when we vote the warrant for the whole town meeting is when we would vote this. But.
So moved.
So second?
Second.
Second. First and second, any further discussion? Not Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. So we'll move forward then. And if Holly, if you could send, or Bob, if you could send out that notification, that would be great. Okay, thank you very much for coming today. Appreciate it. Okay, the next item that we have on the agenda is to discuss the forming of an economic development committee. Is Mr. Eaton here? Okay. Well, we received a letter or addressed to the members of the Board of Selectmen and to CC the town administrator. The letter is requesting a discussion. Basically, the individual was discussing, I'll highlight it quickly, that they're interested in learning if the Board of Selectmen has appointed or considered the creation and appointment of a committee to address the long-term economic planning and development needs of the town. That he presumes that there would be residents in the town of Templeton that would be willing to serve on such a committee, commission, corporation, or authority as provided under any one of the enabling state statutes, Mass General Law, Chapter 121B, Redevelopment Authority, Mass General Laws 121C, Economic Development Industrial Corporation, or simply an economic development committee formed by the Board of Selectmen to conduct some preliminary planning concerning which entity would best serve the community. Between 2006, a series of town meetings adopted several commercial and industrial land use districts at various locations throughout the town. These locations have seen very little, if any, development activity. Former commercial and industrial sites have remained dormant for many years or decades. All properties within appropriately designated districts should be assessed for their future potential reuse as commercial or industrial sites. The needs of the properties, i.e. infrastructure, institutional support, cleanup, tax relief, business incentives, et cetera, should be examined. Hurdles to development and redevelopment activity should be addressed. Marketable properties and incentives should be promoted through appropriate means. Local permitting procedures should be aligned, streamlined, and organized for the ease of the business community. It is my hopes that the Board of Selectmen form such a committee, commission, or board that is populated with apolitical and nonpartisan persons who believe in the mission of promoting business development for the above stated purposes, submitted with respect and sincerity, Glenn P. Eaton. So obviously this letter is requesting that we begin the discussion towards moving towards that. I think everyone would agree that Templeton could sorely use some economic development to help lessen the tax burden on our residents. Templeton has a lot of things going for it. It obviously too goes right through it. We have a one tax rate system where commercial is not taxed at a higher rate than residential, as occurs in other communities. And also, despite what some people may say, we do have one of the lowest tax rates in the county still. So business should be attracted to Templeton, and we should do what we can to facilitate that process. I think that perhaps political climate or financial climate more so have maybe hindered that development. I know that right before the whole financial situation with the town started about a year ago, we have begun to look at this process of trying to attract business into the town, and had voted to begin that process, but I think it was like the very next meeting we started having or coming to the realization of the severe economic situation that we were in, and obviously our time and resources were focused at correcting that. But I think that now that we are on the right track fiscally and financially, that this is obviously something that we should make a priority, I would think, in how best to attract business to Templeton.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of information here.
Yeah.
And I've read through some of it, but not all of it. I think what we should do is probably take it under advisement and ask the town administrator to come up with maybe a recommendation, a way forward for a town our size. We're not going to be able to do huge things, but I think if we set up a plan and do it by steps, then we can actually make some achievements, make some gains.
Yes, sir.
If some individuals could be identified to form a committee, be happy to work with the committee. As the letter points out, there are two choices: form an EDIC, an Economic Development Industrial Corporation, or Redevelopment Authority. Redevelopment authorities typically have been set up in older cities, but recently towns have been setting up redevelopment authorities, and that's really worth evaluating. The advantage there is you have redevelopment authority can exercise more control over the redevelopment of land than an EDIC. So I think the suggestion here, as I read it, was form an economic development committee and then have them come back with a report. I'd be glad to work with the committee with a report to the Board of Selectmen and probably ultimately to the town meeting as to whether or not which of the two choices under state statute made the most sense for the town.
And I've had, other citizens besides Glenn, mention to me that we do need to do this, and have showed some interest. And we need to weigh certainly both options and find out, and I'm glad Bob's willing to work with the committee once we appoint one. But I think we also have to keep in mind, and we need to, plan for it. Just creating this kind of committee, especially with an all-volunteer group, isn't going to get anything, isn't going to get us across the finish line. It's going to take some investment. So we are going to have to, if we want to move forward with economic development, we are going to have to budget some money to allow this committee or corporation or whatever to actually do some work.
Right.
You've got to, have literature and be able to distribute that literature and, those types of things. So it's not just, we can appoint a committee and expect to have some good gains without any investment. So
When the committee,
keep that in mind.
there's the Trader Joe's.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a little bit of process.
Yeah, right, yeah. So we just have to, we have to be prepared, you know, that if we wanna do this, we're gonna have to put some money in.
Yep.
I'd like to invite Glenn to come back here.
Yeah, sure.
And maybe have a discussion, because there's so many issues here. And I just got this about 3 o'clock this afternoon, so I just zipped through it. I
Oh, right.
actually, didn't have a chance to fester.
Right.
But I see there's so many issues involved here, and a key part too is that we have to develop consensus within the town
Mhm.
about where we wanna go.
Right.
That's probably gonna be the hardest part.
It seems to always be, so that's but so then perhaps I agree then, well, I don't perhaps agree, I do agree with Julie that perhaps the best path forward is, as we have our information, we have 2 weeks to kind of look things up and research, and then invite Mr. Eaton to come in and discuss the matter if you would like to further with us in 2 weeks, but then by that time, we may have an idea that, we think that forming a committee would be the best way forward, and we can vote to kind of put the word out there on the town website and other places to local businesses perhaps that we're looking for volunteer members for this committee, and if that works for everyone, sounds like a plan. Okay, great, thank you. The next item that we have is to just, oh, I'm sorry, yes, sir.
Did you say that was MRPC that was the author of that, or Glennie, you said?
Glennie.
Okay. And I just wanted to reiterate what Bob had said, the pros and cons, the redevelopment authority gives us more flexibility as far as getting, a lot of times it's matching grants, or incentive to match grants for cleaning up brownfields, and that's really where a lot of our, economic growth land lies, is we have a bunch of sites that are polluted now. Just from a zoning aspect, the commercial industrial zones aren't really that big, but they're sporadic, and the other ones are pretty much under control of investors already. But the ones that the town would have a chance of getting are the ones that are brownfields, and they're growing this through, keep in mind, the long-term financial commitment of the town. But, like Mr. Marcus said, the redevelopment authority has probably more pros and cons as far as soliciting money and actually following through with getting it done.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Okay, our next item is to discuss the special town meeting. We generally do have one in the fall, as we know. We have not discussed, we've alluded to a fall special town meeting, but haven't looked at dates, or I think Julie has her trusty calendar out.
I do.
So, we may want to look at, because there's always things that need to be dealt with.
All right, so are we looking after the election?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so we're looking at November.
Oh, I don't know, what's everyone think?
I
Definitely
don't.
after definitely after the September. I don't know if in between the September and the November would be, between the primary election and the general election
Right,
would be a
but
good time. or-
our override question's gonna be in November, correct?
So then we'll have to, yeah. Yeah, so I guess it'll be in November. That's later than it generally is,
Well,
correct?
we've had them in November
Oh, okay.
before, yeah. But you run into Veterans Day and Thanksgiving and my daughter's birthday. Yeah, there are a couple of, if we want to do it like right after the election.
That's true. We could, the 5th or the 6th. I don't know how that works
Yeah.
for anyone. And then obviously the next option would be the next week,
Right,
which is after Veterans Day.
right, because you're into football season and field hockey and soccer.
Right, and will it be a Saturday?
High school.
Oh, that's right. Is it going to be a Saturday? That's something else that we'll have to discuss.
Well, why don't we contact the town clerk and the
see, yeah.
moderator
Okay,
and the school,
yeah,
and usually Carol, can come up with a day,
okay.
all right?
So we're looking at first 2 weeks in November.
First 2 weeks in November.
Is that?
What do you think?
In other communities where I've worked, we typically had this fall special after free cash was certified.
Yeah,
We'll have free cash certified.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That'll be
Yeah.
nice.
If we get the pro forma in, get the DOR to sign off on that, we're halfway there
Wow.
in August.
That's such a change
It's
compared to.
a huge change.
As compared to not having it for annual.
Yes,
It's nice to
and
have it.
having a negative number.
Right, exactly. It'll be quite nice to have it, so. Thank you. Okay, so we'll contact Carol then to see what dates work for her. The next issue is to discuss the personnel policy, which I believe was Diane's request, and she is ill, so she is not here. So, and if anyone, unless someone has an issue with it, I'll push it off to the next meeting.
Do you know what her specific issues were?
I'm not sure. I personally won't want to speak to him because I don't want to misrepresent.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on the personnel board. We had a town meeting where we would dissolve the personnel board because it used to be 2 members of the Board of Selectmen, community member, and a few other people. Now we have a town administrator. We didn't have that before. So I think there's some language that we really need to change and update to reflect the changes in our governmental structure and how we do things. So, I mean, that's what I saw when I went through it again. I'm like, oh.
Little updating.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll move that off to our next meeting. And then that was our last item. So the final item is just selectmen's comments. And I just want to start, just so I don't forget, as just a little Facebook update. There was some confusion in the community, and apparently I did not parse my words carefully. When we were discussing the override figures, which I know everyone didn't have Mr. Markle's spreadsheet, when I said contracted positions, I meant individuals that are contracted. So the discussion about the 2% increase, when I said that did not apply, that only applied to non-contracted individuals, it still would apply to all the union positions. Laborers union, Bob included all of those in his. The only people that it would not include are people who are individually contracted, which would be the town administrator, the fire chief, and the police chief, correct? Am I missing any? So those are the only 3 employees that would not cover, would be the town administrator, police chief, and the fire chief. So it would cover the police union, laborers union, that would be included in that figure if it passed. So, because I just saw a lot of that on Facebook a while. You know, the unions haven't had raises, and we're well aware that many of the unions have had zeros for 4 years or longer. So when I said only non-contracted employees, I meant individuals that have individual contracts. So. Okay, Julie, do you have anything that you would like to add as selectman comments?
I have a few. All right. First of all, there's going to be a meeting here at Camelot on August 20th for the next round of CDBG to get residents' input and participation. And I know we had trouble last year. We didn't meet the survey, so we had to change the application. And we were fortunate, very fortunate, that it got funded. So if if people want to do a master plan for this section of town, we're going to need income surveys. And that's going to be here on the 20th at 6 o'clock. This weekend, we have the craft fair coming up, the Templeton Arts and Craft Festival. It's on Saturday and Sunday. And at 10 a.m. on Sunday, there will be Tropical Sensations. It's a steel drum band that's paid for by the Templeton Cultural Council. So it's a big community event. The Zoning Board of Appeals needs members. We have a number of committees listed on our website that need members. So we're talking about trying to, create another committee. So we need people to step up and participate.
Thank you very much. Doug, did you have anything you wanted to?
No, I don't really have anything, real relevant. I was gonna mention the craft fair, but Julie already talked about it. That's okay. It is a great event, and I hope everybody comes out and participates.
And John, did you have anything that you
We're not
wanted to?
gonna talk about the craft fair. I think it would be redundant.
Okay, and I don't have anything else. So with that, oh yes, Holly.
I just want to make a comment on the August 20th meeting. I did post that as a Board of Selectmen meeting because I figured you would probably all be here and you might want to participate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, and if there's no.
I just have one more comment. I think we need to have our official cards made out, Holly, to what committees we're on. What
The
other,
town clerk does
I think we need a letter from you or something?
No, you just go get sworn.
We just go get sworn in?
We
Okay.
changed the policy this year, so you-
Okay.
I just email her and you go and then she does your card.
All right, then that's something I have to do, 'cause I was waiting for the card. Where's this card?
If there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second,
Julie?
yes?
Doug?
Yes.
John? And I'll vote yes. Thank you all for coming.